Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. And as usual, I personally would like to welcome our guests and to thank them, first of all, for coming to our site, to entrusting us with their time and with their journey. And this is in hope that as we speak in our conversation, that we would learn something and know the principles by which they got out, so that we can become the best human spirit while we're here on this planet Earth. I want to welcome our guest. I'm going to turn it over to her, have her introduce herself to you, and then we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Bracha Goetz, and I'm the author of, 40 books that help children's souls to shine. And I'm also the author of one really candid memoir about my spiritual journey, how I became an Orthodox Jew, and also how I developed and overcame food addiction.
That is awesome. I can't wait for us to get into this conversation, because a lot of people that I know and I've read about that are having difficulty with food addiction or addiction of some sort. And so as we talk to you and you share with us that beautiful journey of how you got out, that'd be excellent. So tell us about your childhood as to your family unit, because I believe this is where you and I begin to perceive and learn about human behavior. And we get a chance to, at a micro level, see the world. Talk to us about your family network.
Yeah, you're so right. It's what shapes our world view, the family that we grew up in. Well, I was blessed with very loving. I have an older sister that's 9 years older than me. So in many ways, I grew up like an only child. My sister was in college when I was 9. And my parents were very grateful to have me. They didn't really expect they were going to have more children. So I think I got a lot of love. Yeah. And my parents were old when they had me also. So I was kind of surprised, but very excited. So, I feel that I had everything growing up except for one thing. And that was, a sense that I was a spiritual view of life. When I'd asked my father, did God? And he said, no, he's agnostic. He didn't know if there was God or not. I said, well, then what's the point of living? And he said, I just kind of live. It's kind of like I'm watching a TV show. I wonder what's going to happen next. And he was, a very happy, wonderful person. But for me, that wasn't enough. I felt that something was missing from my life, and I didn't know until later, realized that my heritage had been thrown away, like the wisdom from it. What really had value had been tossed. There were cultural remnants of my heritage, but that was it. The spiritual substance was so. I began to get hungry. I began to get hungry from age 12 on. Something was missing, but I didn't know what it was, because I didn't even know that I was a soul that needed spiritual nourishment. But I was looking. I looked into many religions. I looked into environmentalism, social action, all these different things to fill me up, experimenting, drugs, everything, relationships, looking for the wisdom to life, like what's our purpose here. It's even why I ended up going to Harvard, because I figured, I'll go to Harvard University. It's like the top school, so maybe there I'll find life's wisdom, So I started working really hard in school, and that wasn't hard for me because I was a very curious person. I wanted to learn about everything. So I just worked and learned and did well and got into Harvard. And it was, I enjoyed being at Harvard, but it was a little bit disappointing to realize this wasn't the ultimate I was searching for. And I'm grateful that I got there, because it kind of is like a mirage, an illusion. I feel like I got to this place where all these really famous people I met, wealthy people, powerful people, and I realized that's not it. That can't be the end result of what we're striving for. There's something more. So at that point, the food addictions got even worse, because the desperate longing was so intense. When I graduated with honors from Harvard, I went to medical school, and there I think my addictive behaviors became the worst, and I was at the lowest level. So I looked very successful on the outside, like I was going on this successful path, and inside I was getting sicker and sicker and suffering terribly. And I felt like I was in a prison. Yeah. That's what an addiction is. So, and the bizarre behaviors when you have an addictive behavior, you only do it in private. So no one knew what I was doing in secret. I looked normal, but my life was not at all normal. So like in my memoir is Searching for God in the Garbage. It goes through all the garbage that I searched for, because that's what I was doing, searching everywhere for what still had value. Something had been thrown away. Something was lost.
Wow.
So I had a 6-week break between my first and second year of medical school. I went to Israel, and I didn't come back for 10. So I came back 10 years later, a really different person, and I composed the book. I didn't really write it. I put together my diary entries, my journals, my letters, and I filled in the missing pieces. So it's a case study. You see me developing the food addictions, that desperate search for more, and then healing from the food addictions when my soul finally found the nourishment that it was craving.
Talk to me, and because that's a lot that you put out there, and so far it's a really interesting journey that you're having. And I have seen this over and over again, where the young ones, when someone is young and they know that there's another realm, or we call it the spiritual realm. There's another part of mankind that needs some answers other than just the part that seeks knowledge as far as earthly information from society or college and so forth. And as you are telling us this story, here is this desire within you. And as usual, most of us do it because we look and tie or create I want to say a natural emotional tie along with it that causes to a behavior that we put out there, like yours is eating. I know other people were many other different things, but we always find something for some reason to try and fix that hole. Talk to me as to what happened as you moved in your searching and you're moving. What happened in Israel, the onset of it, the beginning of it, that took place, that started you on your spiritual journey. What happened in Israel, and how?
Wonderful. Yeah. I was on a spiritual journey from age 12 on, when my consciousness, my awareness was raised, and I realized something was missing. When the hunger started, But when I reached Israel that summer, I was 22 years old, and I met a rabbi, a great rabbi who's no longer alive, Rabbi Noach Weinberg. And he was teaching about, he'd say, what is the purpose to life? The purpose to life is to experience the greatest pleasure possible. Now, that was nothing like what I expected to hear. What do you mean? That sounds like hedonistic. We're just here to experience pleasure? Then he revealed the pleasure ladder, which is based on ancient mystical wisdom. In other words, there really are instructions for living. And we weren't just given this world blindly, like, okay, now figure it out. The pleasure ladder has 5 rungs. The lowest level on the pleasure ladder are all the physical pleasures in this world, the natural physical pleasures, like an orange. An orange, it ignites all of our senses.
Yeah.
It's to touch, to smell, to see it, not really to hear it, but definitely to taste it. It tastes so sweet and juicy, and it's got a peel that keeps the pleasure in for months, So it keeps the pleasure in, and inside there, in the middle, at the core, are the seeds of eternity. These seeds, the seeds with infinite intelligence that create a tree, that go on and on just recreating. It's amazing what the seed does. Now, it could have been that we didn't need to eat every day, and it could have been that, or we were given, or there were pills, tasteless pills that we could take every day to give us energy. But no, everything is designed to give us the greatest pleasure possible. It's not by accident. This was all like amazingly designed. So the physical pleasures, being in nature, eating natural foods, moving, dancing, these are the lowest level of pleasure, and they uplift not only our bodies, they nourish our bodies and our souls, because the 5 levels of pleasure, they correspond to the 5 levels of the human soul. So the physical pleasures uplift the lowest part of our souls that are connected to our bodies. And then the second level is love. And love, each level is totally empowering. We are not dependent on another person to bring love into our lives. We bring love into our lives by focusing on the virtues of another. That's the definition of love. What do you appreciate about someone else? So a person in prison can focus on the virtues of a grandmother that once did something kind for them, and they're filled with a warm emotional feeling of love in that moment, just by thinking about that person that once did something. So we can bring love into our lives at any moment, and we can bring also the joy, the gratitude for a natural thing into our lives. Each level up brings more connection, because when we have an addiction, we feel alienation, estrangement, disconnection. So by bringing in connection, this is how we heal. And then the next level up is meaning, doing something meaningful. That fills us with an even more lasting pleasure than the physical pleasures and love. Doing something meaningful, what's good and meaningful. And what's higher than that is creativity. When we bring something good and positive into the world from the uniqueness within us, that we bring that into the world in gratitude. And the highest level of pleasure is transcendent. When we transcend the limitations, we transcend our own limitations, our bad habits, our addictions. We make a tiny crack in it. There's like no greater joy on earth than that. It's when we lift the veils between us, so we see how we're all connected, how we're all part of one spiritual entity. So each level up brings us more connection, and each level up we more closely emulate the source of all, the infinite oneness. And the price that we have to pay to get to each rung of pleasure is one thing. It's gratitude. Gratitude, mindful gratitude, is what brings us all these pleasures.
Wow. When you got a hold of that information and as you began to get immersed into it, how did you, the individual, the woman, handle all of that with looking into your world and applying the stages as you had mentioned? How did you feel and did you start to use it for your benefit as you learn all of it?
Exactly. Let's say I was when I was suffering, I was fluctuating between extreme binge eating, constant stuffing my face on these big binges, and then I would contrast that with extreme dieting. So I was never like, obese, and I was never like unhealthy skinny. I looked normal, but I was suffering terribly with my, bizarre behaviors. So once this was understood, then I no longer had that sense of scarcity that followed me around all the time. This sense of scarcity, of being desperately hungry, of never having enough pleasure, because my soul was always so ravenously hungry. Once I understood, once I had the vision of the pleasure ladder, it's really a vision of, it's the stairway to heaven from earth. It's how to enjoy this earth and reach heaven while we're here. It's basically, it shows us there's an abundance of pleasures here for us to enjoy at every single moment.
Yeah.
And And once we have that awareness, it's a whole different outlook. I never again was running on that emptiness. There was never that same desperate hunger. Because I now had the understanding that there's an abundance of ways to bring pleasure into our lives at every moment. It's an understanding. Basically, food addictions and all addictions develop from a sense of not being in control in life.
Yeah.
And a sense of not trusting. Like you said, from your early childhood, you developed a sense of trust. And I had the sense of trust in my family, but I didn't have the sense of trust in the world at large.
Yeah.
Like that we're all here for a good purpose. So now once I had the understanding that this is not a world of randomness and anarchy, that this world was designed to give us pleasure, and that we are here with goodness inside of us and goodness in the world, and that sometimes things are concealed, but they're there, and it's our role to bring out the sparks of goodness while we're here on earth in everything.
Yeah, I agree. I believe when you embark on certain your relationships, even to a level as friends and different types of things, relationships bring you much of that information. And you as an individual, the eating and the binging back and forth, how did it affect your outlook at you? Did you because I know once we come back to a state of acceptance, we begin to see these things, we realize, wait a minute, I have brought along, with all that type of lifestyle, I've brought along some things that I need to deal with. The less than thoughts that we had allowed to develop within our life. Did you allow any of those concerning your body? How did you function within that space? Did you come out with any damage emotionally? For self, I call it those negative thoughts that we tell us. You're fat, you're ugly, whatever. Those less than thoughts. What were yours that you had to deal with?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. No, I guess not. I mean, I feel good about myself, and I just, when I feel like overeating, I ask myself, is it my body that's hungry or my soul? And when I ask that question with loving compassion, you ask that question with loving compassion, and you know the answer right away.
Yeah.
You have the awareness that it's your soul that's hungry. It's not your body. I had a good meal. I had a nice, nutritious meal. And why do I keep wanting to stuff my face? Just because it's pleasurable.
Yeah.
Why not have that immediate pleasure keep lasting? So therefore, when I ask the question, is it my body that's hungry or my soul? The neurons that are firing in the lower part of my brain, the amygdala, they're saying, you got to have more. This is pleasurable. Keep going. You need more pleasure. I say, is it my body that's hungry or my soul? And then the neurons, they travel all the way up to the prefrontal cortex. And I'm asking the question from a higher place in my consciousness. And then with loving awareness, I can answer, it's not my body that's hungry. It's my soul. So I can open the window. I could feel the warm air. I could feel the breeze. I could step outside. I could turn on the music. I could stand up and stretch. I could text somebody and let them know what I admire about them. If I do any of these things, then the bag of potato chips won't be calling my name. I'm in a whole different place now. I'm in a place where I'm not feeling like there's a scarcity. I'm in a place of abundance, and I don't even have to do those things. Just thinking those thoughts, that's enough. I've got my head into a place of abundance.
Now, that is beautiful. To be in that space of abundance, as you stated. And from this place, you're now making your decisions. You're moving forward. I want you to talk to us about how did that, as you begin to move forward now with all of this knowledge and this newness, this newfound freedom, how did you then begin to navigate in the world dealing with individuals that presented in your lifestyle, your life, where, maybe their outside negative behavior and stuff like that, dealing with that? How did you learn to manage dealing with the outside world, as they say, as you began to gain all of this insight about who you were?
Beautiful question. There's a great quote from Anne Frank, Anne Frank is the mentor that got me to start my diary. So the quote is, look at how a single candle can both defy and define the darkness. All we have to do is shine light, not get absorbed in the darkness. There's another quote from ancient mystical wisdom that I don't know the exact words, but we're here to shine the light because the light is real and the darkness is not. Mm-hmm. It's really a world of light, and we just need to spread it. People that are spreading more darkness, they don't have that sense of abundance. They need more light in their lives, So that's all we're here to do. Just shine our souls. And the more we nourish our souls, the more we can shine them. Now, if a person has been through neglect or abuse as a child, it's really important to nourish their hungry souls, but it's probably not enough. Then they also need therapeutic intervention because there are many layers of protection that build on top of that still pure soul protected. And person needs support to remove all those protective layers so that they can experience the nourishment. They can't even absorb the light when they're suffering with all these layers on top, So to an extent, they can absorb the light because it's an infinite light. Mm-hmm. So some can get through, but to let more of it get through, usually a person that has suffered from trauma in childhood, significant trauma, needs therapeutic intervention in addition to nourishing their hungry souls.
I think they make this, we mask it, we protect. The trauma will cause us to respond in many different ways. And one of them is we have to figure out, how can I deal with this trauma so it doesn't, cause me a nervous breakdown, if you will. And so we kind of take that in and we morph it in such a way that we don't recognize that we have put that covering there. And so it does take therapy to begin to by the questions that a therapist will ask, or a coach or whatever, that it has the understanding of what they're doing, is that they are gifted with the questions to ask the individual why, because they've gone through most of those things and they learned questions that brought a desired outcome. So you're absolutely right. We kind of cover it up, but it does take someone outside of us that will be able to bring us to that clarity, because it's so familiar to us. We don't even know it's there, and it's there usually to protect us. One of the very first things is that I grew up in a church, and one of my first things that was created according to that was light. And light, the force of light, and what it does when you go into even a cellular level and how light works. I think it's a powerful revelation to see the power that is within light. So here you are learning all of these things, you're practicing it, and I want you to talk to me as now you're coming through and you are going to write books. How did, because you have quite a few of them, how did the first book came about? Beyond, I know you talk about putting your journal and stuff together and whatever. How did that book, as far as the children, what was it about children that caused you to focus your revelation on that?
Wonderful question. I try to write the books. My goal is to write the books that I wished I had as a child. Mm-hmm. Books that teach children from the very beginning that they are spiritual beings, how to nourish their spiritual selves so that they can shine in life, so that they can have the skills for joy to take through life, so that they don't have to play catch up the rest of they have those skills. If you help children to imprint it on them early in life, then they will know how to live more productive lives throughout. So that's basically what I've been doing. And it's been a big joy. Of course, when I help children's souls to shine, my soul shines too. And some of my books, my background and I love health and science. So a number of my books deal with that. I have books about teaching children about protection from sexual abuse in childhood. And I have books about teaching about healthy eating. My newest book is Let's Stay Healthy. Mm-hmm. So, because there was a mother that called me. She said, please, can you write a book about eating healthy, exercise, getting enough sleep, all these different things. I wrote it during the pandemic because we learned from the pandemic. One of the things is that have to strengthen our immune systems. It's so important. We saw the difference between people that had strong immune systems and those. So it's teaching children the why. Why is sleep valuable? Why are healthy foods good for us? And why are the junk food is designed to be delicious and addictive, while the natural foods are designed to be delicious and nutritious. They're totally different kinds of entities. So I teach all about that and how our bodies were designed to move, how important exercise is in staying healthy. I love explaining all this because public health was, even as an undergraduate at Harvard, I was taking courses at the Graduate School of Public Health. I love helping. If we have healthy bodies, that's a huge part of letting our souls be able to shine.
And it's a shame that the educational system, but I understand why they do what they do, because it is contributing to that program that we are less than. And because of that, they shun away from bringing something, the books like you have and others that have, to teach something that I believe is a lot more valuable than, math is great, but when you begin to teach stuff like that, it's so much more valuable to the human spirit and the human experience to get them to move at a different level than how we have and train the students today. Because if that system was working correctly, we wouldn't have all this damaged kids and kids constantly destroying each other. And so it's a shame. I really wish that, I know the educational system is at a crossroads right now, and I wish they would bring in books like yourself. Kids are excited to know the why. They are curious beings. I mean, especially children. They're so curious. And to withhold the why from them, I think it damages our children, because if they understand, like you said, the why of sleep, the why of exercise, the why of spiritualness, the why of all of these things, I guarantee you that child will flourish to much more than just if you focus on the academic piece. And I wish that that system would have a reckoning with people like yourself to help penetrate in there. I really do. It's so needed. Your books, I looked at some of your titles. What you're teaching in the books is such a necessary tool. As you are, you have this insight about working with children and why you're doing that. Talk to me about some of those stories, because I know that some reach out to you after reading your books and so forth, and they will tell you a story about what happened to someone. If you can tap into your memory and pull out one or two of those stories about a child getting it and moving through from your time with your books.
First of all, you expressed that so beautifully about what to teach children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really resonating. And I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but like I get calls from telling me how their books have saved their lives, like especially about books about prevention of abuse, because parents don't know how to speak to their children about these difficult subjects. What I love to do is take complex topics, make them as simple and joyful to explain to a child as possible. So it's not scary, in a calm way. And the children actually love the books, which is so funny. I meet children and they tell me sometimes when I give presentations that the books about prevention of abuse are my favorite books. I'm like, are their favorite books? I'm like, what? I never expected that to happen. Children love the guidelines. They love clear guidelines in life. It's amazing. So there was once, a guy who was like in his 20s. He was eating over my house one day and he saw one of my books on the shelf. He goes, "Oh my gosh, you're the author?" He said, "You don't understand. I was being bullied as a child. That this is the book that changed my life.
Wow.
You know, this helped me to go to face school again the next day. And it's just got me to where I am today. You know, that was like a funny encounter because, you know, he didn't even know who I was or anything. It was like really neat to learn that kind of thing. But I'm not sure if you were asking about a particular story. There's a book I wrote, I Want to Be Famous, because little kids love the idea of being famous. Once you meet these famous people, you're not that interested anymore because you see what their lives are actually like. They don't usually have the most pleasurable lives, as we know. So, this book is about a boy. He wants to be famous so much all the time. He thinks about that. And then he becomes famous overnight. Someone takes a YouTube video of him, the way anybody could get famous now. He becomes famous overnight by doing something ridiculous. And he's loving it. What a blast it is to be famous. And then suddenly someone else does it better than him and he's not famous anymore. And he's so miserable until he realizes, wait a minute, I can get that spotlight shining all the time. I don't have to get it from outside. I could get it from within. And then every day will feel amazing. That's what it's about. When we learn how to nourish our hungry souls. He was hungry. He had an emptiness. He learned how to fill it. And then every day could be his amazing day. That's what, that's another message of a story that unfolds for children. Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff I was talking about, especially also with that gentleman you were talking about going, are you the author? Because those type stories, and when we hear them, they do so much for our world when we hear those things. And I tell people it brings us or gives us the author or whoever that person is. There's a level of joy that it's very hard to explain with words from the English language, but we try. But it originates and emanates from someplace so deep within us, and it rolls out in our face out of in this beam that is intense that very few people get a chance to experience. And I tell them one of the rewards of going through your journey is that at the as you come through it, that you're then able to produce books, podcasts, all these other tools by which then you can go and serve some other people. And there's, to me, one of the greatest gifts that is out there is when we are servants. When you are in that place, your heart is different. Your expectation is different. You don't judge. You're not one that judge. You're not one that you've learned empathy. You've learned kindness. You've learned all of these things from your journey that you're able to exchange into and deposit into someone's life that will take you into that space of joyfulness. And I love the story about that young man. And this is what I'm talking about, like the school system utilizing materials like this. There's so many of it, and yet they just don't want to bring it into that system. But I challenge any educational leader that can allow some of that into it. Their children will be such, just overcomers, because a child's curiosity is priceless. But we feed it junk sometimes. As you can tell, one of my heart thing is getting to those kids, because I see the cost in our life because we become adults. We were one of those kids, and we were wondering how come no one ever told me about some of these things when I really needed it as a young person, if I had an understanding of the why, my life would be much different. So here you are, you're producing all of these books. You're getting a chance to speak and deliver your revelations at different places. And you mentioned that the pandemic brought out some of those books that were hidden within you, and you gave birth to them. Talk to me about, you said the recent one is about the health. When you are teaching this, because it was some place that you had to walk through, how does that make you feel when you're at a place now that you're able to impart something of a personal journey that you went through and had some difficulty?
When we go through challenges, I mean, we're here on earth for that purpose.
Yeah.
Once we were fully spiritual, and then now we're put here into this clothing of our physical bodies. Yep. We're spiritual entities in clothing, and eventually we'll become spiritual entities again. While we're here, we go through challenges. That's what we're here for, to refine this spiritual entity that we are, to nourish it. So all the challenges we go through, they uplift us. They take us to a different place than we were at before. And so, like you said, the joy that I get when I'm able to help people through my challenges, and the joy that everybody gets when they can help another person through the challenges they've been through, those are the highest levels of pleasure. You know, it's love. You're appreciating another person. You're seeing that spark of infinity within them. You are doing something good and meaningful in the world. You are putting a unique part of yourself, your unique challenges. You are transforming them into goodness in the world, and it's transcendent. You are connecting yourself with everybody. All the veils lift. We see how we are connected. Like every day, the vegetation is giving us, here's life. We say, here's life back. We're giving out the carbon dioxide. The tree is giving me the oxygen I need. We're doing this with all of each other too.
Yeah.
Everybody that we meet, we're meant to meet that person and connect in a certain way, and hopefully bring something good into the world. You know. Yeah.
I agree. I agree with you, man. I think, and people that have been listening to me, they'll hear me. Have heard me said it. The body houses the spirit. It is not who we are. The location that we were born will, in many cases, or the culture that we are born will dictate the house that we carry. But the power within the house is that journey that we go on to and walk through and begin to see and learn about that person that is inside that house. And that is the precious journey we manifest because of how we were instilled with others' belief system and their perception of the world. And we begin to navigate from that point of view. But until we begin to incorporate ours, as you say, our story, then we are able to contribute to a different level to the whole universe, the whole dance between the human experience as we walk this planet. I have another question I want to talk to you about as to your books and publishing your books. And you mentioned that you have 45 of them. And what is your motivation? I know you mentioned it briefly, but I want you to get a chance to talk about it. What is your motivation when you sit down and you mentioned someone brought to you, a mom said to you, you need to write a book about this. And you're like, what is that spark that creates in you something for you to produce?
So that book, let's say this mother calls me. She tells me about the book that she wants, and I say, yes, that book needs to be in the world. Because really, I just want to write books if they're needed. I mean, I don't feel like just writing things, but if they're needed, then yes, okay. So I go to sleep. I go, yes, I'd like to write it, but I don't know how to write that book. I go to sleep, and then like 3 days later, when I wake up, in other words, I'm asking the cosmic oneness to give me the ideas of how to write the book. I'm just a channel. So I go to sleep, and when I wake up, there is the book. I get the title. I know exactly how to write the whole book. And I keep a pad by my bed, so I scribble in the dark. I'm writing down, and then I hope that in the morning I could read what I wrote, and I'm just scribbling these things, and I get it. And so that's it. I just write the book. It doesn't take long to write a picture book. It's not a lot of words, and it comes pouring out because I've really been given how to write the book. That's what happened, Another example, let's see. There's a book that, here it is. There's a book that Let's Appreciate Everyone. It's about how to interact and be more inclusive of children with disabilities, because usually children with disabilities are the loneliest children. They don't get invited to birthday parties and play dates as much as other children at all. So, and this book explains, like, when a person has a visible disability, children are curious, so they stare. That makes sense. If there's another 5-letter word that also begins with S, if they smile in addition to staring, it changes everything. It forms a connection between the two children. It really encourages children to smile in addition to staring, and that's what's needed. That spreads the love. So I have a grandchild with a severe disability.
Yeah.
And when she was born, people were saying to me, I bet you're going to write a book about disabilities now. And I said, I'd love to do that, but I don't know how to write a book. I'm not an expert on disabilities. So I was reading an article, and a person was giving workshops about how to interact with children that have disabilities, how to be more inclusive. So I read the article, and I called her up, and I said, I'd love to make your workshops into a picture book so everybody can understand these principles. She said, go for it. So that's what happened. So I didn't have the information, but my eyes were opened to looking for it. And so thank God I was granted the ability to write that book. And now it explains, like, if you meet someone with in a wheelchair, another child in a wheelchair, sit down at their level so you're both on the same level. If you meet a child who's blind, say your name, I'm here now. And if you're leaving, say, I'm going now. Explain all these things. If you meet someone who's deaf, you can write them a note, speak slowly so they can read your lip. And also you could draw them a picture. Different ways to interact. And there are many disabilities that are invisible. If you see a child sitting on the side, not playing with everyone else, they might have some type of social disability. Go over, invite them to come and join you, be supportive. Maybe they don't want to join you. They may say no. It's still good to be asked. So it gives children basic guidelines that they don't have. Maybe nobody explains to them how to interact. This is what children need. Children flourish from having these basic guidelines explained to them about life. And this is an important aspect. So those are different ways, just some examples. And of course, many of my books were written. There are 40 published books now, children's books, and many of them were written just from watching my own children and seeing what they needed. Now I watch my grandchildren and I see what's missing, what could help their lives be more joyful. So that's how I write.
That's excellent. I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I have learned much, and you have sparked something within me and about getting this information to the younger people. And I know there's a lot of teachers and educators that'll listen to us. I challenge you guys to get some of these books and bring it into your space to give the children an opportunity to understand some of the whys. It's really, truly important that they do, because that curious mind, once they have that information, I know that they will flourish to an even greater degree. And again, I want to thank you for coming and spending the time with us and bringing us through your journey. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. I think you're going to be writing some children's books. I have a feeling. Thank you.
I have grandkids, so now who knows? Actually, I had someone telling me that I needed to do that, because they saw the interactions between myself and my children.
Beautiful.
And she's been trying to get me to write a book as far as single dad. I have, and she saw my relationship with my sons as a single dad. And it was my pleasure and opportunity to get a chance to be a servant to those my 5 boys. I have 4 that live with me and 1 that was with his mom. But the more that they gave to me, for me to give to them, they give so much more to me, because they made me into such a better man. So who knows, I may do that one day. But thank you so much. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Bye-bye.